Welcome to The Deep Dive. We're the podcast that plunges into fascinating knowledge, pulling out the most compelling insights from, well, all sorts of sources. Today we're tackling something maybe a bit mysterious, maybe even unsettling for some of you, the call of the void. You know that weird, fleeting urge, like when you're standing somewhere high up and for a split second your brain throws this image at you, doing something drastic. That's what we're digging into. We're going to unpack why these thoughts are actually so common, what they might tell us about our instincts, and how it all ties into self-control. Our mission to shed light on this, turn that unsettling feeling into maybe, a deeper understanding of ourselves. So yeah, let's explore the paradoxes of our own minds. And hey, before we really dive in, a huge thank you to everyone who's already part of our All Sorts podcast community. Seriously, your support keeps us going, keeps us exploring these fascinating topics. If you haven't joined us yet, think of this as a friendly nudge. Come join the adventure. Find the All Sorts podcast on YouTube, see the stories unfold visually there, and connect with us on X, Instagram, Threads. Keep the conversation going. Liking, sharing, subscribing, it genuinely helps us reach more curious minds like yours. Together, we can explore these hidden corners. Okay, let's get into this phenomenon.
It really is fascinating, isn't it, how widespread this is yet?
Well, people don't really talk about it much. There's this kind of silent worry around it. Lots of people feel it, but they worry it means something dark about them. But the sources we looked at today, they point to something much more common, maybe even protective. Okay, so let's lay the groundwork. For anyone hearing this term for the first time, what exactly is this call of the void? What's the definition we're working with?
Right. Well, the French have this wonderful term, l'appel du vide, literally the call of the void. But in psychology circles, it's often called the high place phenomenon, or HPP for short. Basically, it describes that sudden, quick, sometimes pretty disturbing urge, or even just the thought of jumping or falling, maybe throwing yourself into empty space when you're somewhere high up, like a bridge, a cliff edge, a rooftop, even just a high balcony, that sudden mental flash of giving in.
Yeah, I've definitely felt that exact thing. But is it only about heights? You mentioned our sources show other examples too, right?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, high places are maybe the classic example, but the research shows HPP, or this kind of thinking, isn't limited to that. It can pop up as pretty much any impulse to do something risky, something self-destructive, even if it feels completely out of character for you. Things like a fleeting thought while driving to just jerk the wheel into oncoming traffic, or being on a boat and thinking, what if I just jumped in? Some people report it when holding a sharp knife, like an urge to cut themselves, or sticking metal in a socket, or even putting a hand near a fire or disposal. The common thing isn't really a desire to do it, but the sudden intrusive thought of doing something immediately dangerous.
Okay, that definitely sounds unnerving. If someone experiences that, does it mean something seriously wrong? Is it like a hidden death wish or a sign of a mental health problem brewing?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? And the answer, thankfully, is pretty reassuring. What the studies make really clear is that HPP is incredibly common. And generally, it's considered a normal psychological thing. There was this key study back in 2012, kind of the first big one on HPP. They surveyed about 430 students, and the results were striking. Over half of the students, without any history of suicidal thoughts, said they'd experienced HPP.
Over half? Wow.
Yeah, over half. And even among those who had experienced suicidal thoughts before, something like 3/4 also recorded HPP. So this research really changed things. It showed there's a big difference between just imagining a dangerous possibility and actually wanting to do it. It's usually not a hidden death wish, not at all.
Right. So if it's not some secret desire to, take the plunge, why does our brain cook up these, frankly, terrifying images? It feels so backwards. What are the main scientific ideas behind it?
Yeah, that's where it gets really interesting. One of the main theories is that the call of the void is actually a misinterpreted safety signal. It's sort of a weird form of self-preservation. Think about it. You're in a genuinely risky spot, like a cliff edge. Your brain goes into hyper-alert mode, right? That vast instinctual safety system kicks in. It screams, whoa, back up, or careful. It's a primal alarm bell.
So our body's reacting to keep us safe almost faster than our conscious mind catches up, like instincts taking over.
Exactly. That first safety signal is incredibly fast, often totally unconscious. Then your slower kind of analytical brain tries to figure out what just happened. Why did you flinch? Why did you step back? And it might mistakenly interpret that automatic safety response, that step back, feeling as if it was triggered by a conscious desire to jump. It's almost like your brain runs a what-if simulation, but then gets the labels wrong. It misinterprets its own safety drill. So, weirdly, this dark-seeming thought actually confirms your will to live. Because you recognize you don't want to jump, it reinforces your instinct to protect yourself. A very strange self-check mechanism.
That is, yeah, that's fascinating. Our brain tricking itself to confirm it wants to survive. Okay, but you mentioned there's another major explanation too.
Yes. The second big reason revolves around something called anxiety sensitivity. This basically means how aware someone is of the physical feelings of anxiety. Racing heart, quick breathing, that pit in your stomach, and how much they tend to interpret those feelings as dangerous in themselves. Research shows that people with higher anxiety sensitivity are more likely to experience the call of the void. They might misinterpret their body's natural heightened arousal in that risky situation, the adrenaline, the alertness, as an internal urge to do something destructive, when really it's just an overinterpretation and amplified reading of their own body's completely normal physiological signals in a tense moment.
Okay, so for those people, it's less about wanting to jump and more about how intensely they feel their body's anxiety response, and then maybe misreading what that feeling means.
Precisely. For someone high in anxiety sensitivity, that intense, maybe brief feeling that they want to jump comes from being hyper aware of and then misinterpreting their internal state. It's a good reminder, actually, that even when we feel these powerful sensations, whether it's freedom or fear, we still have the ability to control our impulses and tell the difference between just a thought and an actual desire.
This really does seem to touch on deeper stuff about human nature, freedom, choice. It sounds like the kind of thing philosophers would absolutely love. Do the sources get into any of those more abstract, maybe philosophical takes?
Oh, they definitely do. It connects quite strongly to existential philosophy, actually. Jean-Paul Sartre, the famous existentialist, in his big work, Being and Nothingness, he talked about this. He called it the vertigo of possibility. He linked it directly to our huge freedom of choice and those really profound, sometimes maybe overwhelming existential thoughts. Standing on that edge, the sheer freedom to choose to end your existence, just one step away. Realizing that creates this huge sensation, this really striking idea about what it means to be you. Your identity, in his view, is defined by your actions, including the actions you don't take. So being aware you could make such a destructive choice actually highlights the vastness of your freedom.
Huh. So it's not just a mental quirk. It's like a moment where we grasp our radical freedom. The fact that we could do something so final and choosing not to is part of defining who we are.
Exactly. It's a brief, maybe unsettling confrontation with that fundamental freedom. And Albert Camus, another major philosopher, kind of built on that. He suggested that in that fleeting moment on the edge, you get close to contemplating the ultimate absurdity of life, the idea of a seemingly meaningless act like ending it all. For some people, maybe this contemplation is even driven by a kind of innate, maybe slightly morbid curiosity we humans have, wanting to peek over the edge, metaphorically speaking, even with zero intention of going over.
Interesting. And what about those deeper, maybe less conscious ideas? Does Freud come into this at all? The idea of like a death drive?
It's an interesting angle, yeah. And some writers who follow Freudian ideas do touch on it. While the modern psychological view really emphasizes the misinterpretation and survival aspects we talked about, there is that older Freudian concept, the death drive, or thanatos. Freud suggested it coexists with eros, our life drive, our will to live. This death drive is sometimes linked to broader human tendencies, violence, conflict, self-sabotage. It's more abstract, almost, philosophical. The idea that for things to evolve, the old self sometimes needs to be symbolically let go of or destroyed to make way for the new. So, while probably not the direct cause of HPP in the way we understand it now, it adds another layer, another way to think about why destructive urges might sometimes surface from deep within us.
Okay, so we've talked a lot about the call of the void itself, but the research we looked at connects this to the broader picture of impulsivity and self-control, right? How do they relate? Are these fleeting urges a sign someone just struggles with impulse control generally?
That's a really important connection to make because, yes, intrusive thoughts like HPP can sometimes get lumped in as just poor self-control. But the research, particularly from the University of Geneva, gives us a much more refined picture. They used a standard psychological tool, the UKPS Impulsive Behavior Scale. What's useful about the scale is it doesn't just say impulsive or not impulsive. It breaks impulsivity down into 4 specific types or facets. Those are negative urgency, lack of premeditation, lack of perseverance, and sensation seeking.
Right. And which of those specific types of impulsivity did the studies find were most strongly connected to having intrusive thoughts or trouble controlling thoughts?
Yeah, this is where it gets really insightful. The studies consistently found that 2 of those facets were significantly linked: negative urgency and lack of perseverance. Let's break those down quickly. Negative urgency is basically the tendency to act rashly, impulsively, especially when you're feeling strong negative emotions, like saying something cutting when you feel rejected, or lashing out when frustrated. This one was the strongest predictor of pretty much all kinds of intrusive thoughts, especially those really unwanted, ego-dystonic ones that feel alien to you, unpleasant thoughts, obsessions, even just crowded, racing thoughts. Then there's lack of perseverance. That's more about having difficulty staying focused on tasks, especially if they're boring or hard. This was linked more closely to things like everyday worries, mind-wandering, or those nagging thoughts about stuff you haven't finished, particularly during long or tedious activities.
Okay, got it. So one is about reacting impulsively when feeling bad, and the other is more about focus and follow-through on tasks.
Exactly. And thinking about the why behind it, negative urgency might reflect a kind of weakness in stopping those automatic, emotion-fueled thought-action links, leading to those really disruptive emotional intrusions. Lack of perseverance, maybe that's more about a weakness in filtering out distractions or sustaining mental effort, leading to those more subtle thought slips like daydreaming or getting easily sidetracked.
That makes a lot of sense, that distinction. What about the other two types of impulsivity, lack of premeditation and sensation-seeking? Do they connect to intrusive thoughts?
Interestingly, no, not really in the same way. The studies found that lack of premeditation, which is more about acting without thinking through consequences, not planning ahead, and sensation-seeking, loving excitement, novelty, maybe taking risks for fun, generally did not predict these kinds of mental self-control problems or intrusive thoughts. In fact, higher sensation-seeking was sometimes even linked to fewer attempts to suppress thoughts, which is often an unhelpful strategy, and less worry overall. Yeah, it suggests that maybe some kinds of impulsivity, the ones geared towards exploring the world or seeking novelty, might actually act as a buffer against anxiety, perhaps keeping you focused outward rather than inward.
That's really counterintuitive but fascinating. Did they see any differences between men and women in these connections?
They did notice something there. The link between lack of perseverance and intrusive thoughts seemed to be a bit stronger for women in one of the studies they analyzed. The researchers speculated this might be because women, on average, perhaps, report being more concerned about performance or getting things done, potentially leading to more intrusions about unfinished tasks or worries. But that's just one potential explanation.
And what about the direction? Do the intrusive thoughts cause the impulsivity, or does being impulsive lead to more intrusive thoughts? Is it a bit of a loop?
Yeah, it definitely looks like it could be complex and potentially circular, a real chicken and egg situation. While some theories propose that having a lot of intrusive thoughts might make someone more likely to act impulsively just to escape them, there's also evidence going the other way. Impulsive actions can definitely fuel more intrusive thoughts, like replaying what you did, feeling regret or shame, those kinds of counterfactuals. So it's likely an interplay. We probably need more longitudinal research tracking people over time to really tease apart how thoughts and actions influence each other in that way.
Okay, so bringing it back to the person experiencing the call of the void or other intrusive thoughts that feel unsettling. What practical advice, what tools do our sources offer to help manage these moments? How can you find some peace with it?
Right, the practical side. The good news is there are definitely effective strategies, and they make sense given what we now understand. First, and maybe most importantly, acknowledge it and let it pass. When a thought like that pops up, just recognize it. Okay, that's just a thought. Try not to judge yourself for having it. Don't try to fight it necessarily. Just accepting its presence, like noticing a cloud floating by, can really take the emotional sting out of it and stop you from spiraling into self-blame.
Just notice it, don't engage.
Exactly. Second, use your breath to ground yourself. If the thought makes you anxious heart pounds, you feel tense, consciously slow down your breathing. Try simple box breath. Inhale slowly for 4 counts, hold gently for a second or two, exhale slowly for 4 counts.
Right.
Repeating that a few times physically calms your nervous system.
Okay, deep breaths.
Yeah.
Makes sense.
Third, remind yourself you're safe and in control. This is especially helpful if you lean towards higher anxiety sensitivity. Actually say it, even if just in your head. I am safe. I trust myself not to act on this thought. I am standing securely, far from the edge.
That verbal affirmation actively counters the potential misinterpretation your brain might be making.
Reinforce the reality.
Precisely.
Yeah.
Fourth, shift your focus deliberately. If you're in a situation triggering these thoughts, intentionally redirect your attention. Look at a specific object in the distance. Focus on a person nearby. Notice a tiny detail in your immediate surroundings, the texture of something you're touching, the exact color of a leaf, A specific sound. This pulls your brain out of the what-if scenario and plants it firmly back in the present moment.
Grounding in the senses. Exactly. And finally, number 5, lean on your support system. Don't underestimate the power of talking about it. Share these feelings with a trusted friend, a partner, or definitely a mental health professional if these thoughts are causing significant distress. You'll probably find quite quickly that you're not alone. So many people have these kinds of thoughts without being depressed or suicidal. Sharing really helps break down the shame and isolation.
Those sound like really concrete, helpful tools, turning that moment of discomfort into, well, almost an opportunity for self-awareness, maybe.
I think that's a great way to put it, yeah. Experiencing the call of the void, while unsettling, can actually be this weird invitation to understand yourself better, to build more self-trust. If you can meet these moments with curiosity rather than just fear or shame, you can kind of reclaim them. See them as reminders of your own resilience, your capacity for rational thought, and ultimately your powerful drive to live. It's a sign of a complex, healthy mind at work, really. So as we wrap up this deep dive, maybe think about this. Our minds are these incredible machines, constantly working, not just navigating the everyday, but exploring all possibilities, even the strange ones that make us pause. The call of the void, as unsettling as it might feel sometimes, is really a testament to that complexity. It's this intricate dance between instinct, how we interpret things, and that profound freedom we have to choose our own way, moment by moment.
So what does this mean for you listening right now? Maybe it's an invitation to be curious about your own mind's workings, to trust that built-in drive for self-preservation, and to maybe recognize that even these unsettling thoughts aren't necessarily a flaw, but could actually be a sign of a mind that's highly aware, maybe even well-adjusted, capable of navigating complex situations. You're connected to how your mind works, understanding it, being aware that's a kind of superpower for growth, isn't it? We really hope this deep dive gave you a new perspective, maybe even a bit of peace about these kinds of impulsive thoughts. If anything we talked about today clicked for you, sparked an aha moment, or just made you more curious, then, well, that's why we do this at the All Sorts podcast. And as you go about your week, keep that spirit of exploration alive. Think of the All Sorts podcast as your companions on this journey of discovery. Help us share these insights. Like this deep dive. Share it with someone you think might find it interesting or helpful, and please subscribe to the All Sorts podcast on YouTube if you haven't already. Your engagement truly helps us reach more people. And to our amazing subscribers, thank you. Thank you. You're the reason this community thrives. Find us beyond the Audio 2X, Instagram, Threads. Let's keep the conversation going. Until our next deep dive, keep asking questions, keep exploring, and trust that incredible wisdom inside you.